I didn't run from my wedding because I stopped loving him. I ran because 5 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, I finally heard the truth. Nathan Reed stood behind the chapel doors in his perfect black tuxedo, laughing softly into his phone while the string quartet played inside and 200 guests waited for me to become his wife. After tonight, she signs everything over, he said. The house, the trust, the old man's safe. Emily won't even know what happened until she has my last name. My hand was already on the silver door handle. My veil was pinned too tight. My mother's pearl earrings pulled at my ears. The bouquet shook in my fingers so hard that one white rose snapped at the stem and fell onto the marble floor. For one stupid second, I waited for him to say he was joking. I waited for the man I had loved for 3 years to sound guilty or nervous or human. He didn't. He sounded relieved. Like marrying me was a business deal he was tired of pretending was romance. Then he said the sentence that emptied the air from my lungs. Tell them not to worry. She has nowhere else to go. That was when I lifted the front of my wedding dress and ran. I didn't think about the guests. I didn't think about the cameras, the flowers, the cake, the money my aunt had spent on gold-rimmed plates and champagne towers. I only heard my own breath cracking in my throat and the church bells striking 8 above me like warnings from heaven. Outside, Chicago was drowning in rain. It came down hard and cold, turning the sidewalk into black glass, flattening my curls against my cheeks, soaking through satin that had cost more than my first car. I stumbled down the chapel steps in white heels that were never meant for escape. Someone shouted my name behind me. A bridesmaid, maybe. Maybe Nathan. I didn't turn around. The dress dragged behind me like a ghost trying to pull me back. At the corner, I yanked at the train until the stitching tore with a sound that made me flinch. I kept running anyway. 3 blocks. Maybe 4. The city blurred into headlights and wet brick, and strangers who looked through me like runaway brides were just another thing that happened in bad weather. I had no purse. No phone. No coat. Just a ring on my finger that suddenly felt heavier than a shackle. My lungs burned. My ribs ached. Rainwater ran into my mouth, tasting like metal and panic. A taxi slowed near the curb, then sped away when the driver saw my dress, my bare arms, my terrified face. I laughed once, a broken little sound that scared me more than the thunder. Of course no one stopped. I looked like trouble wrapped in lace. Then headlights appeared at the end of the street. Not 1 car. 4. Black SUVs moving together in a silent line, too clean, too slow, too deliberate for a normal rainy night. My body went cold in a way the storm could not explain. Nathan had found me. That was my first thought. He had sent someone. I stepped backward, my heel catching in a crack in the pavement. The world tilted. My knees hit the ground first. Pain sparked up my legs, but I barely felt it. The lead SUV stopped less than 10 feet away, its lights washing over me until I couldn't see anything but white. A door opened. Expensive shoes touched the wet pavement. Then a man stepped out, tall and still beneath a black umbrella someone else held for him. He wore a dark suit, no tie, his shirt collar open against the rain-chilled air. His face was all sharp angles and quiet command, the kind of face people noticed and then looked away from for their own safety. He stared at me like I was not a woman in a ruined wedding dress, but a problem placed in his path by someone very foolish. I tried to stand. My hands slipped on the wet sidewalk. The last thing I saw before the street folded under me was his gray eyes narrowing, not with pity, but recognition. Then his voice cut through the rain, low and absolute. Get her out of the street. I woke up to warmth, which made no sense, because the last thing I remembered was cold rain biting through my skin and headlights turning the street white. For a few seconds, I did not move. I listened first. That was what fear had taught me. Listen before you breathe too loudly. Listen before you open your eyes. There was no church music. No thunder. No Nathan calling my name in that smooth voice he used when other people were watching. Just the soft crackle of a fireplace, the quiet tick of an old clock, and rain tapping against windows somewhere far away. I opened my eyes slowly. The ceiling above me was not mine. It was high and dark and crossed with wooden beams, the kind of ceiling that belonged in a house too expensive to feel like a home. I was lying in a bed large enough for a family of 4, under heavy charcoal blankets that smelled faintly of cedar and clean soap. My wedding dress was gone. Panic hit so fast I sat up too hard, and the room tilted. A white robe had been tied over me, thick and modest, covering me from my shoulders to my ankles. My wrists had been cleaned. A small bandage circled my left knee. My engagement ring was still on my finger. Somehow, that made me feel worse. Across the room, my dress hung over the back of a leather chair, torn, stained with rainwater, no longer beautiful enough to lie for anyone. Then I saw him. The man from the street stood near the window with his back half turned to me, a phone in one hand, his other hand resting in the pocket of his black slacks. He was not wearing his jacket anymore. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, and the firelight cut sharp lines across his face. He looked calm in a way that did not belong to ordinary men. Calm like locked doors. Calm like decisions already made. I grabbed the blanket to my chest and forced my voice to work. "Where am I?" He ended the call before answering. Not rushed. Not surprised. Just finished with one world before turning back to mine. "Safe," he said. His voice was deep, quiet, and completely certain. I hated how badly I wanted to believe him. That is not an address. One corner of his mouth almost moved, but not enough to become a smile. "My home. North Shore. About 20 miles from where you collapsed." 20 miles. My heart began to hammer. I looked toward the door. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like him probably noticed the smallest changes in breathing. "No one locked you in," he said. "Then why does it feel like I cannot leave?" His eyes shifted to the rain-streaked glass behind him. "Because leaving would be unwise." I pushed the blankets away and stood too quickly. My legs nearly failed, but I caught the edge of the nightstand and stayed upright through pure embarrassment. "I do not know who you are. I do not know what you want. But I am not staying in a stranger's bedroom." "Adrian Blackwell," he said. "And this is the guest room." The name meant nothing to me at first. Then it did. I had heard it whispered at Nathan's charity dinners by men who smiled too carefully. Blackwell. The name attached to private clubs, waterfront buildings, political favors, locked doors, and rumors nobody repeated twice. My throat went dry. "You are him." Adrian watched my face change and looked almost disappointed. "That depends on what he told you." "Nathan." His expression sharpened at the name. "Yes, your almost husband." The words landed harder than they should have. Almost husband. Almost prison. Almost mistake. I looked at my ring again and twisted it until the diamond cut into my skin. "I need to go. You need to sit down before you fall again. Do not tell me what I need." For the first time, something in his face softened, but only a little, like a light seen under a closed door. He stepped away from the window, then stopped immediately when I flinched. He noticed that too. Instead of coming closer, he pointed to the table beside the fireplace. A glass of water. 2 pain relievers. Folded clothes. Socks. A phone still in its box. "You were soaked through and shivering. Mrs. Vale, my housekeeper, helped you change. The doctor checked your pulse, your temperature, and your knee. No one touched you without her in the room." The explanation was exact. Controlled. Offered like evidence. I hated that it answered every fear I had been too ashamed to speak. "Why?" I whispered. "Why bring me here?" Adrian's eyes met mine, gray and unreadable. "Because a bride does not run barefoot through a storm unless the groom is worse than the rain." Before I could answer, the phone in his hand lit up again. He glanced down, and the room changed around him. Not visibly. Not loudly. But the air tightened. "What is it?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me. A black security feed showed 3 cars waiting beyond tall iron gates, their headlights dimmed under the storm. My stomach dropped before he said the words. "Nathan Reed found you." For one full second, I forgot how to breathe. The security feed was grainy and silent, but I knew those cars. I knew the shape of Nathan's world even when it came dressed in rain and shadows. Black sedans. Clean lines. Headlights dimmed like predators trying not to be seen. They were parked beyond Adrian Blackwell's iron gates, as if the storm had delivered them there by accident, but nothing about Nathan was accidental. "No," I whispered, though the screen did not care what I believed. "He cannot be here." Adrian lowered the phone, his face giving away nothing. "He is." My hands went cold around the blanket. "How did he find me?" "Your ring." I looked down. The diamond on my finger caught the firelight, bright and innocent and cruel. For 3 years, I had thought it was a promise. Now it looked like a tracking device wrapped in platinum. Adrian did not need to explain more. He saw the understanding land on my face. "Take it off," he said. I twisted it once. Twice. My knuckle had swollen from the cold, and the band would not move. Panic rose again, sharp and humiliating. "I cannot." Adrian stepped toward the table, picked up a small bottle of lotion, and set it on the edge nearest me. He did not come closer. "Use that." The distance mattered. I hated that it mattered. I hated that this man, whose name made powerful people lower their voices, understood fear better than the man who had almost become my husband. I worked the lotion around the ring with shaking fingers. The band slid free on the 4th try. It left a pale circle on my skin, a ghost of ownership. I dropped it onto the table. The tiny sound it made was softer than rain, but it felt like a door closing. Adrian glanced at one of the men standing just inside the hallway. I had not even noticed him there. Dark suit. Still posture. Eyes turned respectfully away from me. "Put it in a signal box and take it to the West Road," Adrian said. "Let them chase metal." The man picked up the ring with a cloth and disappeared without a word. I stared at Adrian. "You are helping me trick him. I am helping you gain time." "Why?" My voice broke on that one word. I was tired of men with reasons. Tired of smiles with contracts hidden behind them. Tired of being valuable only when someone could use me. Adrian looked toward the security feed again. "Because Nathan Reed brought trouble to my gate." That is not an answer. It is the safest one. I almost laughed. Safe. Nothing in this room was safe. Not the lockdown quiet. Not the men in suits outside the door. Not the way Adrian Blackwell could turn a command into weather. "I need to call the police," I said. He looked back at me. "You can." The answer startled me. "You are not going to stop me?" No, he reached for the boxed phone on the table, opened it, powered it on, and placed it beside the water glass. "Call anyone you trust." I stared at the screen as it lit up. Anyone I trusted. The phrase hollowed me out. My father was gone. My mother had died when I was 16. My aunt loved appearances more than truth. My friends were still at the chapel, probably being told I had a breakdown, that I was unstable, that Nathan was heartbroken and searching for me. He would sound so convincing. He always did. "He will make me look crazy," I said quietly. Men like him do not start by locking doors. They start by controlling the story. Adrian's gaze sharpened, not with surprise, but recognition. "Then we do not let him speak first." Before I could ask what that meant, a chime sounded from somewhere downstairs. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just one elegant note moving through the house. Adrian's jaw tightened. A second later, another man appeared at the doorway. "Mr. Reed is at the gate. He says his fiancée is inside and he wants her returned." Returned. The word hit me so hard, I had to grip the back of the chair. Adrian looked at me then, not over me, not through me, but directly at me. "Do you want to see him?" My answer came from somewhere deeper than fear. "No," he nodded once, as if that was the only law he needed. Then he turned toward the door, and every man in the hallway straightened. "Tell Nathan Reed," Adrian said, his voice low enough to freeze the room, "that Miss Carter is not property. And nothing that enters my house under protection leaves by demand." I heard the words leave Adrian's mouth, and something inside me went dangerously still. Not calm. Not brave. Just still, the way a lake freezes because the air has become too cold for movement. Miss Carter is not property. No one had ever said my name like that before. Not as a possession. Not as an obligation. As a person standing behind a line no one else was allowed to cross. Adrian left the room without looking back, but the house seemed to move with him. Footsteps softened in the hallway. Doors closed somewhere below. Voices dropped to low tones that never rose above the rain. I stood in the guest room with the robe tied tight around me, one hand pressed to the place where the ring had been, listening to a stranger protect me from the man I had almost married. Mrs. Vale appeared a minute later with a tray balanced in both hands. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, with silver hair pinned at the back of her neck and a face that looked like it had survived enough storms to stop being impressed by them. "Sit before your legs make the decision for you," she said. Her voice was kind, but not soft. I obeyed because my knees were already shaking. She set the tray on the table. Tomato soup. Toast. Hot tea with lemon. The smell should have comforted me, but it nearly broke me instead. I had not eaten since breakfast, back when I still believed I was going to become someone's wife. "Thank you," I whispered. Mrs. Vale studied me for a moment, then unfolded a pair of gray sweatpants and a navy sweater beside the bed. "These should fit well enough. Bathroom is through that door. Towels are warm." I looked toward the hallway. "What is happening downstairs?" She followed my gaze. "Men are talking." "That sounds harmless." "It rarely is." The honesty made me look at her. She poured tea like we were discussing weather, and not the fact that my former fiancé was standing outside the gates of a Mafia boss. "Is Adrian dangerous?" I asked. Mrs. Vale did not pretend not to understand. "Yes." My stomach tightened. "To me?" She placed the cup in my hands. "That is a different question." The tea burned gently through the porcelain. I held it with both hands and tried to stop trembling. From downstairs came the faint vibration of the front doors opening. The sound traveled through the house like a warning. I stood before I meant to. Mrs. Vale's eyes sharpened. "He told you to stay here." "He did not tell me anything." "No, that is true." She did not stop me when I walked to the door. Maybe she knew I needed to see it with my own eyes. Maybe she knew fear grows teeth in the dark. The hallway outside was wide, lined with old paintings and low lamps that painted the walls gold. I moved quietly, one hand on the railing as I reached the top of the staircase. Below, the grand foyer opened like something out of another century, all black marble, carved wood, and rain light spilling through tall glass. Adrian stood near the front doors with 3 men behind him. Nathan stood just inside the threshold, still in his wedding tuxedo, his blonde hair damp from the storm, his expression arranged into wounded concern. He looked perfect. That was the first terrible thing. Not frantic. Not ashamed. Perfect. Like a groom searching for his confused bride. "Emily," he called when he saw me at the top of the stairs. His voice cracked in exactly the right place. "Thank God. Baby, everyone is worried sick." My fingers dug into the railing. For a second, the old version of me almost answered. The version trained to smooth things over. To apologize first. To make men comfortable before I made myself safe. Then Adrian turned his head slightly. Not enough to interrupt. Just enough to remind me I had already said no once, and the world had not ended. Nathan took one careful step forward. "Come home. You are exhausted. You had a panic episode. We can explain this to everyone." There it was. The story being built around me. Brick by brick. Panic. Exhaustion. Confusion. Anything except betrayal. "I heard you," I said. My voice was small, but it carried. Nathan's face changed for half a second. Not enough for most people to notice. Adrian noticed. "You misunderstood," Nathan said gently. "You were emotional." I came down one step. Then another. "I heard you say I had nowhere else to go." The foyer went silent. Rain tapped against the glass like 1,000 tiny witnesses. Nathan's eyes flicked to Adrian, and for the first time, the mask slipped at the edges. "This is a private matter." Adrian's voice was quiet. Not once she asked for protection. Nathan smiled without warmth. "And what do you want in return, Blackwell?" Adrian did not move. "Nothing she does not choose to give." Those words hit harder than any threat could have. Nathan looked back at me, and the sweetness in his face turned thin. "You have no idea what you are standing in the middle of, Emily." My hand tightened on the railing. "Then tell me." He glanced at Adrian again, then smiled like he had found the knife inside the sentence. "Ask him why he knew your father." The question landed in the foyer like a glass dropped on marble. Ask him why he knew your father. For a moment, no one moved. Not Nathan with his perfect wounded groom face. Not the men behind Adrian. Not Mrs. Vale, who had appeared silently near the hallway with her hands folded in front of her. Even the rain seemed to pause against the windows, holding its breath with me. My father had been dead for 6 years. William Carter, the gentleman who taught high school history, fixed leaky faucets with duct tape, and kept a jar of butterscotch candies in his desk for nervous students. My father, who wore tweed jackets with elbow patches and cried during old movies. My father, whose funeral had smelled like lilies and wet wool and the kind of grief that makes people speak in whispers. He did not belong in Adrian Blackwell's world. He did not belong in any sentence Nathan Reed spoke with that smile. I looked at Adrian. What is he talking about? Adrian's face did not change, and somehow that was worse than guilt. Not here. Nathan gave a soft laugh. How convenient. Adrian's eyes stayed on me, not him. Emily, you need to rest. Do not do that. My voice cracked, but I did not look away. Do not tell me what I need so you do not have to answer me. Something moved behind his eyes. A flicker. Pain, maybe. Or memory. Nathan saw it too, because his smile widened. She really does not know, does she? Adrian turned his head slightly. Leave. One word. No raised voice. No threat. Still, every man in the foyer seemed to understand that the air had changed. Nathan lifted both hands in a polished show of innocence. I came for my fiancé. You came for leverage. She is confused. She said no. Nathan's gaze cut to me, and the sweetness drained from his expression just enough to show the calculation underneath. You think he is different because he gave you a robe and soup? Men like Blackwell do not rescue women, Emily. They collect debts. My stomach turned cold. Debts. My father's name. The safe. The overheard phone call. All the pieces moved around me, refusing to become a picture. What debt? I asked. Nathan's eyes sharpened with victory. Adrian spoke before he could. Enough. The front doors opened behind Nathan, and a man stepped in with a black umbrella. He did not touch Nathan. He did not need to. Mr. Reed, he said politely, your car is waiting. Nathan stared at Adrian for a long second, then looked up at me. The mask slid back into place, smooth and handsome and false. I will give you until morning, he said. After that, whatever happens is on you. He turned and walked into the rain as if he had not just cracked open the ground beneath my feet. The doors closed. The silence after him felt louder than his voice. I came down the last step slowly, one hand gripping the railing, because the room had started to tilt again. Adrian remained where he was, shoulders straight, face carved from restraint. Tell me, I said. Now. He looked past me toward Mrs. Vale. Give us the library. She hesitated for half a second, then nodded and disappeared down the hall. I followed Adrian because standing still felt worse. The library smelled like leather, old paper, and smoke from a fire burning low behind a brass screen. Shelves climbed to the ceiling. Heavy curtains shut out the storm. On the desk lay a silver picture frame turned face down, as if someone had hidden a memory in a hurry. Adrian stood beside it and did not speak. Did you know my father? I asked. His hand flexed once at his side. Yes. The answer was so simple it hurt. How? He looked at the fire. 16 years ago, your father found me behind his school after midnight. I was 18. Bleeding, freezing, and too proud to ask for help. I stopped breathing. My father was a teacher. He was more than that. Adrian's voice changed on those words, dropping into something rougher, quieter. He took me inside. Cleaned me up. Called no one. Asked no questions until I could stand. Then he gave me his coat and enough cash for a bus ticket. I tried to fit that story over the man I remembered. My father at the kitchen table grading essays. My father humming while he made pancakes. My father telling me kindness was only real when it cost you something. Why did he never tell me? Because he knew what I was becoming. Adrian finally looked at me. And he did not want my shadow near you. My chest tightened. Then why are you near me now? His gaze dropped briefly to the pale mark where my ring had been. Because your father saved my life once. He reached for the face-down frame and turned it over. Inside was an old photograph of my father standing beside a much younger Adrian, both of them squinting against sunlight in front of a brick school building I knew by heart. On the back, written in my father's handwriting, were 6 words that made my knees weaken. Protect her if I ever cannot. I stared at the 6 words until they stopped looking like handwriting and started feeling like a hand pressed against my back from 6 years in the grave. Protect her if I ever cannot. My father had written that. My father, who used to leave sticky notes on my lunch bags and underline passages in library books because he thought the right sentence could save a person at the right time. My father, who had never once mentioned Adrian Blackwell. The photograph trembled in my hands. I hated that I could recognize the brick wall behind them, the side entrance of Lincoln Preparatory, where Dad had taught for 28 years. I hated that young Adrian looked nothing like the man standing beside me now. He had been leaner then, all sharp bones and bruised pride, his dark hair falling into his eyes, one arm held close to his ribs beneath my father's oversized brown coat. Dad stood beside him with that same patient half-smile he wore when students lied badly about missing homework. It was real. That was the cruelest part. Why would he write this? I asked, but my voice barely sounded like mine. Adrian did not answer right away. He moved to the window, keeping distance between us as if my grief had edges he did not deserve to touch. Because 3 months before he died, he came to me. The room seemed to narrow. No, the word left me before I could stop it. He died of a heart attack. Adrian turned back slowly. That is what the report said. My fingers tightened around the frame. Do not do this. Do not take the one simple thing I had left and turn it into one of your secrets. His face tightened, but he did not defend himself. I am telling you because Reed forced the door open. Not because I wanted this for you tonight. Then what did my father want? The fire cracked behind the brass screen. Outside, the rain pushed against the windows like it wanted in. Adrian walked to the desk and opened the top drawer. From inside, he removed a manila envelope, old and softened at the corners. My name was written across the front in my father's handwriting. Emily and Carter. My knees nearly gave out. Adrian placed it on the desk between us. He did not open it. He did not push it toward me. He waited. That almost broke me. Nathan would have grabbed my hand and forced the moment to serve him. Adrian just stood there, letting the choice hurt. I reached for the envelope with fingers that felt numb. The flap had been sealed once, then opened carefully. Inside were copies of documents, photographs of ledger pages, a small brass key taped to a note, and one folded letter. I saw Dad's handwriting and had to close my eyes. Read the note first, Adrian said quietly. I unfolded the small piece of paper attached to the key. If you are reading this, sweetheart, I failed to come home with the truth. I pressed my hand over my mouth. No sob came out. Only air. Adrian looked away, giving me the dignity of not being watched while I fell apart. I forced myself to keep reading. The safe is not about money. It is about people who paid to erase what they did. Trust no one who asks for the key. Trust the man who owes me his life only if he gives you the choice to walk away. I lowered the note slowly. The words blurred, then sharpened again with terrible meaning. The safe Nathan mentioned. Adrian nodded. Your father kept evidence. Names, transactions, favors. Enough to ruin men who built their lives on being untouchable. And Nathan wanted it. Nathan wanted access through marriage. As your husband, he could petition control over parts of the Carter estate if he proved you were unstable or dependent. My stomach twisted. The chapel. The guests. His gentle voice calling me emotional. He had not been improvising. He had been building a cage with flowers on it. I looked at the brass key taped to the paper. It was small, ordinary, almost disappointing. It did not look like something people would chase through a storm. Where is the safe? I asked. Adrian's silence answered before his mouth did. You do not know. His eyes held mine. Your father made sure no one did. I almost laughed, but it came out broken. So everyone wants something from me that I do not even have. No, Adrian said. They want what your father trusted you to find. The difference should not have mattered, but it did. It placed my father back beside me instead of above me as a ghost with secrets. A knock sounded at the library door. One of Adrian's men entered, holding a phone. "Mr. Blackwell, the ring was taken west like you ordered." Reed's cars followed it. "But there is another problem." Adrian's expression went still. "Speak." The man glanced at me, then back at him. "Someone leaked the chapel footage. The news is reporting that Miss Carter suffered a breakdown and may be under the influence of an unidentified criminal associate." My blood went cold. Nathan had started the story. Adrian took the phone and watched for 3 seconds before setting it face down on the desk. Then he looked at me, and his voice turned quiet enough to be dangerous without becoming cruel. "Emily, by morning, the whole city will think I stole you." By morning,